All right, thank you. Dan Herr, City Stormwater Inspector, DID, and also a resident. It's great to see you actually field ops has play out here and see more wider umbrella. So we understand that we were caught in a bit of a chicken and the egg problem with the labor code and what we need out of the labor code. We understand that we're all working in a make good faith effort to have a good path forward on how to address all of this. To speak to the management supervisor problem, and yes, it's beautiful that they have such transparency with captain and lieutenant. But the boss, that'd be ahead of my org chart, doesn't exist. So there is no construction inspection management. They took care of that role, and then is actually the head of permits and inspections, who would have been his boss, is my immediate superior. So it'd be great if we clear these org charts up, and do this ahead of time, and we could just have like a line item that says supervisor of, manager of. That way we can clear this up. So it's a simple, it's a verbiage problem. It's just that easy. So if we can take care of that before, then we can come back with another labor code. That'd be terrific. So as we are all trying to organize, we're all trying to work around this hurdle. So I know that we all are doing a good job of working together to do this. It'd be terrific if we saw a bit more feedback and respect to us providing other labor codes of other cities and other municipalities that have solved this problem already. So, yeah, conditions of employment, very important. There's reasons, that's the third line item. And again, as we spoke to, and Kyle brought up, thank you very much, what those conditions are can be negotiated, and it'd be great just to hear the no. But till then, it'd be great to be able to have the floor to any of these other conditions. And there's plenty of compromise to be made. Uniform and dress code, I don't care what color blue you put me in, really don't. But conditions of employment is going to be very important. I don't speak just for myself, but I speak for, well, say 100 people that like to remain private. Though it's great to see the enthusiasm that the city has provided when it comes to labor organization. Of course, you know, plenty of employers are quite gun shy. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, field ops, you're up.
How you guys doing?
You
My name's Monty Thomas. I'm from Field Ops Sanitation Department. Some of the things that I think should be put in the labor code that should be open for negotiation is the working schedule, as far as, you know, overtime and the 40-hour work week. And if I'm working 40 hours, I'm eligible for overtime. But if a holiday falls in there, I'm not eligible for overtime. Or if I'm sick or something due to working conditions, my overtime is gone, it's out the window. Holidays. Thanksgiving, for example. We're off Thursday, Friday. Friday, I work, and that's straight time. Saturday is overtime. Nobody else is at work. That should be open for discussion, I feel. You know what I mean? And then we got safety with some of the equipment. Some of the equipment is just, it's difficult to work with. And some of the equipment, even being brand new equipment, is difficult to work with. They're not easy machineries to operate. And a lot of them is not up to par. And I don't think we really putting your employees in a safe working condition at all times, because some of this equipment shouldn't even be operated at times. And I understand we got a job to get done. And I speak for field ops right now, but we pretty much do what we got to do to get the job done. Sanitation, our trucks go down all the time. I'm sure you guys know that. But we go out there and we get the job done. And, we try to get it done within the 8 hours that we have to get it done. As far as the supervisor thing, if the superintendents being in the union, I've been in the public sector working for public work department since I was 18 years old. I'm now 50 years old. I retired from the town of Stratford in Stratford, Connecticut. And public works is all I know. I've been doing it since I was 18. You know, and those jobs are unions up there. But the supervisors have a supervisor union. Anybody that can hire and fire, they was in their own union. Now, if they promoted me up to a superintendent, I was out of that union and put into the next one. It was just, you know, or I was just out the union, period. You know, if they weren't in the union. And that's how that rank went up there, you know. And because of the type of jobs that we did, being out in the weather, being out in the cold, working in storms, being emergency response employees, they paid us overtime after 8 hours instead of 40 hours because we're prone to getting sick, you know, prone to getting injured and stuff like that. I mean, it's a lot of risk with being out there, especially in sanitation. I mean, these guys is working in traffic all day, you know. These people don't pay attention when they come by them or I mean, they don't even slow down sometimes. So, I mean, it's a lot of risk. So I think that we should be able to be heard on some of the situations. I mean, it's not just to get y'all to say, well, yeah, we'll change this, we'll change that, but at least hear them out. You might make some adjustments. That's all I'm saying. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Monty.
You.
Just point of clarification, subjects of bargaining, well, number one is wages, number two is hours. To just, Ashley, maybe you can provide some clarity on what that actually means, because I think it actually addresses some of
It
the things
would.
Monty was talking. So I just want
It
to, for
would
the
address
general
overtime,
clarification. yeah.
holidays. It would also address, I believe, Kieran's concern of leave. It would be encompassed in those, so those topics are covered.
That's gonna be my question.
Other comments?
We don't define that. It's not a definition of hours and wages. That's how we are defining it. So again, not to create more work, but to have better understanding or definitions, that could be something so that people think that's how we are interpreting it, or that is up for interpretation. Again, we can, so,
I would say let's fix it so that it's not open to interpretation to the people who come after us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no harm in more clarification. I think it helps us
Yeah.
out in the long run.
Will Schmager, IT. Back to the working conditions, just another example of something that would be covered under that. We have an employee who is out of sick time, but they need a surgery done, and they potentially could do their job telework, but they can't right now. With working conditions covered, we would be able to negotiate that sort of situation. They could go with permanent damage. They broke their leg, I believe. It's workable to come into the office with a boot, a cast. They need surgery, but they'd be out for 2 or 3 weeks. They don't have the time. Teleworking would be able to cover that, but right now their department head won't allow it for some reason. I don't know the specifics, but it'd be something that would be able to be covered. And then the clarification for the supervisors, again, hire, fire, effectively recommend discipline. We sent out forms to employees. They returned back stuff. 50% of them, working conditions was a thing. Next thing was wages, hours. It's the people want it. The people have been talking about it. We've brought it up to administration. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with them. I'm not saying that they're not listening to us. Some of the people feel like they're not being heard, though. And I just wanted to bring that up to everyone.
Thank you.
one other comment I'll make, it's typical people want more people included, not less. But general government, it sounds like, is interested in having potentially a lower bar for supervisors, which is unique, not unique, but is almost different than the other two. That is something that can be discussed further. We can allow, that can be a formal recommendation for you to go back and look. We can ask more of the supervisors if they are interested. I do know from police and fire, some of those people who fell into that rank of sergeant or corporal or lieutenant wanted to be included and have been included.
But it's a different union.
It is a different union, but we've heard from employees. We've not heard from any actual supervisors. So I just would want to make sure if we were going to start cutting or restricting, I'd be interested in gathering that feedback. I mean, I can go either way, honestly, on this one. Less doesn't hurt. Having less people represented does not adversely affect the city. If anything, it does the opposite. But I mean, points well taken by everybody who's here about this defining of who is making disciplinary decisions. So.
Yeah, because it's a line there. I mean, it's, so I think that's something that maybe we should look into a little bit more, and maybe get some feedback from some of those supervisors as well, since it does affect some of them. So I think that might be something to look into.
And I can follow up with you all. I mean, if they're all like, yeah, we don't care, or no, we're not interested. I mean, that's also just as easy. I don't want us to move back, and then all of a sudden we have other people who are interested in coming back and kind of having this back and forth. But again, it can be a priority for us to look at.
Anyone else? Mr. Foy? Oh, you're here, so you know.
Okay. Good evening, Daniel Hill. I'm the Vice President of the Local 4246. To avoid overselling the other workplace conditions, as Mr. Boda said, I just want to say that we understand the fear of the ambiguousness that other terms and conditions holds that the city has. But equally as frightening is how sharp and concise we said only those vested in retirement would be exempt if we decide to go a different direction. In 2013 or 2018, we took on 12 safer employees. We did the same again once more since then. We're approaching 50 to 60% of our department is coming up on being vested because we now require a 10-year vest. And the protection of the living document that Mr. Kidsrow referenced is only alive and viable so long as we have a council and city administration that is willing to negotiate that. Once this labor code is struck, if we get stonewalled by the council and the mayor's office, it is a long, drawn-out, expensive legal battle to modify legislation. Baltimore County went through this 7 or 8 years ago when the county wanted to change their management employee definition. I spoke with one of the representatives of their executive board, and it cost their union dearly until they were done and they won their battle and they were reimbursed. A small union like ourselves, you guys could bury us in legal fees, and there's nothing that we would be able to do about it. I understand in wanting to crawl before you walk, but we get one shot to make this right because November's coming, and there's no guarantee that we keep everybody here that's willing to work with us. And Brandon gave me some documents here, just in the state of Maryland. The city of Hagerstown, their agreement references other workplace conditions or other working conditions. The city of Wilmington, Delaware, Erie, Pennsylvania, Easton, Pennsylvania. I know it's in there somewhere. And then Burlington. Having spoken with representatives from the Annapolis City, the Anne Arundel, and the Montgomery County Professional Firefighters Association, they're all includes the same verbiage. I don't understand where the holdup comes from. We have explicitly stated in the meetings that we've had that we are willing to exclude health care. Nobody here wants to try to modify that document. What we want to be able to do is protect our retirement. Next council could come in and say, LEOPS is gone and there's nothing we can do about it. And then you want to talk about a mass exodus. That is one of our selling points right now while we try to work on competitive wages. To leave that open-ended with excluding that is not only dangerous, but it's irresponsible. And I believe that we should be able to include that verbiage as it sits with the exclusion of healthcare. I told Mr. Mayor in our meeting when we met once before, that would be a hard stop for the 4246. We have absolutely zero control over the passage of this labor code. That is done with or without us. We do not have to sign the collective bargaining agreement that follows. Thank you.
Any other comments?
So I get if I may, we've got next steps. Sounds like there's a lot to digest. We've got a couple of homework assignments that we want to get you some additional information. Understanding this is step 2 of a longer process, I would say we have some time, but let's not drag our feet. But we can go at this again. We can let you guys have some time to digest some of these ideas. I can summarize some of this stuff for you guys to have further considerations, or you can say thank you and it's your show. So,
What's the sense of, did you want, have another work session and let them iron out some of the other questions and
I would
concerns?
like to see this
I'd like to
worked
make
on.
sure that we're addressing some of the concerns that we've
Yep.
heard and make sure that those clear definitions are put in, before we move forward, but, yeah.
I second that. I think some things are brought to the table here that we need to hammer out a little bit more before we take this any further.
Yeah, agreed.
What time frame do you think you're going to need for some of this stuff?
so there's a couple ways to talk about. One is us to review the document and some of the easy things that we talked about, like a typo here or better define. We can do that rather quickly. Some fundamental adjustments, other terms and conditions. There's some exploration that we can have as administration. Again, it is, we could have a circular conversation on and on and on about the same thing. I don't know how far and how left we would go, depending on where we could have 3 of us, we could chat some more about that. But there's some area where we'll just come to an impasse and we'll say this is the final document that we are presenting, and then you guys can decide to adopt it or to make formal recommendation changes yourselves. It can be very quick. It could be something that comes on next work session. I'm not opposed to starting May 1st, or we push it out to the 16th, 15th. So it can be rather quick. Depends on what we're at your, when you want to discuss it again, if it's something that you all want to truly look at as a work session and discuss amongst yourselves on some of the direction, or take it offline. It's
We
up
would
to you.
probably want to do that as a council as well.
I do have another question. I think this may be for legal, but in regards to the general government, the fire department, the police department, we are the only municipality in the state other than Baltimore City that have all 3.
That I'm aware of, and if any of the
Have all 3.
attorneys want to correct me on that, they can, but yes, I believe it's just
I
Baltimore
know
City. I'm
Pocomo,
aware of.
even though they don't have collective bargaining, but they do have EMTs and paramedics that work for the city of Pocomo. But the fire department itself, they don't have paid firefighters, but they have like a portion of it.
But what I'm saying is, right now, the way it stands. So my question is, what is Baltimore City's verbiage in regards withholding all 3 entities and unions? Do they have
I could,
other-
it is very
other terms?
intense, obviously, because it's Baltimore City and they have
Right.
a labor commissioner. It is something that I don't think would be economically feasible with the manpower and the money that the city of Salisbury
Has.
has. But I can get you that code and we can take a look at it. and see
Just
if there's
look at
anything
it,
that you wanna
just to
pull.
see.
Kieran actually represents Baltimore City's FOP and can jump in if you would like him to.
Yeah.
If I may have the indulgence, since you asked such a helpful question, I have no answer to that question. So Baltimore City's Municipal Labor Relations Act is in Article 12 of the Baltimore City Code. The police department falls under a weird thing. They fall under both the municipal code and the state code, which is a mind-numbing discussion that I will not subject any of you to. But it says basically that an employee is any person holding a position in service of the mayor and city council of Baltimore as required by Article 9, Section 99 of the charter to be classified. It does not include city school employees. It says employees of the police department because they get in a different way. Part-time employees engaged in personnel work other than in a clerical capacity, employees occupying positions which involve a relation of personal confidence between the appointing and the appointer and appointee, and those classified employees whose salaries are established by any agency other than the mayor and city council. I would also just note very, very briefly, I mentioned, people mentioned that the Baltimore City is the only one that has these 3 units. Baltimore County does have additional units. I do the police bargaining, or just started doing police bargaining in Baltimore County. But their fire and corrections, their nurses, and a few other units have bargaining rights. Of course, state employees, which I recognize is not a municipality, but state employees do have broad bargaining rights, as do university employees throughout the state, including Salisbury University next to you. I know that the city of Mount Rainier happens, I believe their sanitation workers are unionized and are included in a bargaining unit. It just depends on the jurisdiction and how they pass their labor code. I would say that broadly, the way that I do have to say that this is my personal opinion, just as somebody does labor bargaining, having these 3 broad units, I think, is the way to go. When you do it on a piecemeal basis, department by department, and letting certain people in and out, well, look, I represent the police officers, and police officers in a large portions of the state do have bargaining rights, although it's not universal. But when you do it piecemeal, you end up doing what happened when I was in the city of Laurel not that long ago, which is every time one group comes in to get their bargaining agreement ratified, all the other groups come in to speak on the topic, which is really nice. And I strongly support bargaining rights for everybody. But I can tell you that I have waded through some city council meetings hearing other departments go, we want to be able to bargain while I'm waiting for my agreement to be ratified. I think this is absolutely the way to do it, and I'm certainly happy on behalf of the FOP to provide Andy with some of those citations and codes as to who's allowed in and out. Because of I think it's well settled, and similarly, like I mentioned earlier, on things like other terms and conditions of employment. It sounds huge, but that issue as a lawyer is very, very well settled law. What is and is not another term and condition of employment. It's kind of well trod, and when you use those words, any lawyer anywhere knows what you mean.
Well, I hate to interject because
No, please.
with the Zoom, given that that's settled law, what is written about that? What's the definition of that then? If it's settled law, where's the definition of other terms and conditions?
So
what's acceptable and not acceptable under that clause?
No, it's a very, very good question. So the short answer is it's been developed by case law, which sounds scary and not well defined. But although it is not binding on public sector bargaining, the National Labor Relations Act in Maryland is considered widely persuasive on that issue, and the case law on that has been kind of well organized. So, wages, premium payments, overtime, when overtime accumulates, premium pay, promotional rules, which were included in yours, in-service training, mandatory meetings, indemnification, bereavement pay, on-call pay, changes of job duties and what's required, what job duties are or not included, mileage issues, which is a big concern for general government employees. You've heard some of the things that people have brought up, leaves of absence rules, for example. You heard from some of the people this afternoon about that, right? I think one reason that it's kind of a well understood term, but the reason that everybody follows that language so clearly or so frequently is because when you limit it to 4 things or 5 things or 10 things even, there are other topics that people may want to bring up and bargain, and they should have the ability to, because really bargaining is in my view, is a trade-off, right? And you want to have as many things on the table to make those trade-offs. Otherwise, when you limit it to 4 things, people tend to dig in. And I think it's really unfortunate when that happens. You know, and I want to echo that I appreciate, you know, that there's been some back and forth. And while I don't think my client, at least, you know, kind of agrees with the code as drafted, I do want to emphasize that it you know, we appreciate the opportunity to be involved and to have this conversation and to continue to have this conversation, because it can really bring a lot of peace to people when it's done right. And I think that's really important as this moves forward.
Okay, can I interject again? I hate to do this. 'Cause I'm just a clinical social worker, so I don't know much. I don't know much this lawyer stuff you're talking about. But what I'm asking is, I just want to clarify, because I think one of the things that was answered, and that we even said, we were going to, like the hours, we're going to define a little bit more of that and detail that. But what I'm asking you is, where is it exactly written about other terms and conditions? I'm not sure. I think you talked about several itemized things that fall under that, but where's the case law that says what those things are? Does that exist?
The shortest answer I can give you is that there is a publication by the NLRA that generally lists them. There is no, at least not that I've looked recently, single case that says here is the official list. I'll have to think about that,
Okay.
and if so, I can certainly send it along. It's, you know, it's the kind of thing that has developed over time. I mean, even in the last 5 years in Maryland, somebody had an issue about whether ground rules are a mandatory subject of bargaining. In other words, the rules that determine how you bargain, are those a mandatory subject? They're not. But it developed over time. But I would certainly be happy to look into something. But, you know, is there like a
Punch list.
There's no code, I think,
Right.
even in United States law that says so.
I think the other thing that would be helpful is like wrapping our head around, you know, when you look at Baltimore City having the 3 entities as unions.
Excuse me 1 second. He can't hear us anymore, I don't
he
think.
can't?
No,
Because
I can.
You can?
Okay,
Because this
Yeah.
said shut down.
It's over here.
so we can,
It says it
It's
there?
over here.
we know that.
Oh, okay.
We know that Baltimore City obviously has more money than Salisbury, Maryland. So trying to figure out how to wrap our head around the percentage of that clause compared to what our budget is. Is there a formula for that?
Not that I am aware of. And I would say I have the privilege of representing Baltimore City, which is the 6th largest police department in the United States. I have also represented units that are 10 people large. And so I would just say that, you know, I don't know that there's any risk from a budgetary standpoint, because ultimately, wherever you go, whether it's Baltimore City still has to agree to it and pass an ordinance approving it by the Board of Estimates, and it has to be approved in the budget, right? So we can agree to any number of outlandish things, but if the legislative branch in Baltimore City, the city council, doesn't agree, they can stop us in our tracks. And that is true, I think, wherever I've gone, right? So I don't know if it's a question as much of size as it is a process. And I would say, if anything, the process contemplated by the code for ratification, although I think I'd like to see it have a little more time to negotiate and a little more rapid process, but that's not kind of the end all be all. Ultimately, the body, it has to be approved in the budget. It has to be submitted in the budget, and it has to be passed by the council. And if the council doesn't, it has to go back to the parties for negotiation through impasse proceedings. And that does happen rarely, but from time to time.
From your aspect, what are the pros and cons of other terms and conditions?
I'm sorry, what's the pro of changing that to say other terms and conditions of employment?
And what are the cons? Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll start with the cons. Just to be I'm not sure that there's a ton, but if there's ever becomes a question about what is or isn't a term and condition, it can sometimes lead to impasse arbitration. But again, and I hope my colleagues from the other unions would agree, I think that it's pretty rare. That's the only con I really see, that when you enumerate something and you box it into this is all you can talk about, it restricts the ability of the bargaining process to be productive. By saying other terms and conditions of employment, again, I'm understanding that is, I think, although there's not kind of a definitive list in law, and again, I'll go check if there's a specific case or NLRA guidance. Certainly most unions and most sophisticated unions understand what that does and doesn't mean. And by expanding the number of permissible subjects you can talk about, you're really getting yourself into a position where people can go to the bargaining table and make real trades for what they want, right? If I say and this is a real life example. People think it's always about money, and it's often all about money, but sometimes people will say, what we really want is this kind of schedule enhancement, or we want this kind of pension adjustment. And we're willing not to take as much money right now if we can get this other thing we really need, right? Well, if it's not on the list of 4 things, then I'm just going to ask for more money and hope I can convince somebody to give me what I want. Whereas when you have more options, the unit can really talk about what is going to make their work life the most valuable and productive for them as employees, which inures to the benefit of the city at the end of the day. So I would say that's the big pro, right? When you get it to this well understood term, and I recognize that lawyers are famous for saying we all know what it means, and I'm happy to provide some more definite examples to the council on behalf of my client. I think that's the big pro, is when you know that you can really get into the working experience of everyday employees, then you're really able to strike the right bargains that need to be made that meet their real needs, as opposed to just restricting them into narrow lines. Nobody has a problem with their uniforms this year. They're not going to bring it up. But if they can't get this other thing they need, then they're going to feel like they have to ask for something that they don't need to ask for. I think the only con is, because it is a broad term, every once in a while, you will get into a discussion about what is or isn't a term. But I think that is very rare. And it only really happens when there's kind of a fundamental loss of understanding between the bargaining unit and the employer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Any other comments on this issue?
So just so I understand properly, what are the next steps for this? What did we decide on?
So administration and legal are going to go over some of the questions and things that we had on several of the items, some clarification on some things, and I think maybe May 1st work session for another, if that works. Gonna have another discussion then. And in the meantime, if council has any questions between now and then, let's make sure we forward them to Andy, so that he can get them to legal, if we think of anything as we digest over the next week while we're doing the budget. So I think we're all going to be mush by the end of the week, so don't ask me a question on Friday.
My name by Friday.
So with that, we'll take that approach. May 1st will be the next discussion on council work session. And then based on where we are then, we'll begin to schedule it for legislative approval. With that, we'll go to administration comments for the good of the order.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with anything we've talked about, but just something that I feel I've got to say. This past weekend, another city and us ended up with deaths of 2 teenagers, who one was a tremendous athlete, and another young man, 16 years old. Something's wrong, for sure. Back in the day, the worst thing you could do was push somebody, have words, push somebody, and then duke it out. And it seems to be the choice now of you disappoint someone, you say something that the other person takes offense to, and they pull a gun or pull a knife and kill the other person they have a discrepancy with. I don't know what the answer is. I don't have an answer. But we cannot go on like this. We all have a responsibility to our young people. And I think we need to figure out what's going on. And it was a rough weekend. When we got the text message, I couldn't go back to sleep. And I don't like to do that. So that's all I have for tonight. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Gregory?
So I just wanted to clarify about an event that's happening downtown, and I wanted to ask you guys about it. The God Loves You Tidewater Tour that is coming downtown. The individual who is speaking at this is known as an anti-LGBTQ hate group. What is the city's connection to this? What, why are they being allowed to do this downtown?
Yeah, sure. We were approached by an organization to host an event looking for a large outdoor space. We had just come off of the Jay Copeland concert. It is an outdoor venue that we are in partnership with Tidal Health on. And previous administration and council approved it as an event. We are not. It is not our event, but we are allowing it to happen. There's different aspects to that event. I don't have all the details, but I can get you the details of the who, what, when. But it is a concert, primarily as an outdoor concert venue.
Right, but you say the council approved it. I don't remember.
Not count. When I say council, I meant to say city administration and mayor's office approved it. This is very similar to any other event organizer who wants to host an event in downtown. And we've got a list of them coming up. They come through us to rent or reserve a facility. It's typically how events happen. So
We will not promote it.
Okay, well, it was promoted by the city Facebook page. And I'm really disappointed to see a city, especially, one that has prided itself on being accepting and open to the LGBTQ groups and anybody who is not part of this type of way of thinking or lifestyle. I really am very disappointed that we're allowing this platform to be used by this kind of messaging. It says on the Facebook post that the city made, it says this free one-night evangelistic event will feature a hope-filled message. Well, who is that hope-filled message for? Because it's certainly not for friends and family of mine. I object to this being held downtown. I object to this being in this city. I am extremely disappointed that we have, even if it was inadvertently, promoted this. And I'm not sure what we can do to stop it at this point, but, you know, I would really ask that we really be very, very careful who we allow to have a platform on our resources and our city streets when it comes to stuff like this. I'll be honest, I was very upset when I got an email about this because I was unaware of it previously. This hurts family members of mine. This hurts friends of mine. This hurts my constituents. It hurts all of our constituents. And I am extremely disappointed that this is being held here.
And if I may, Mr. Kittredge can tell you that I am equally offended, and my family is too, and I'm in the same situation. And I'm sorry that it happened, and we will do a better job of screening from now on.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson?
I do concur with our mayor. That young man that was murdered was my nephew. Also, another friend of our family's, he was shot that same evening at the same place. He is just probably coming out of surgery where he was struck in his spleen. It's hurtful. And when our kids are destroying themselves, it's the most hurtfulest thing that you can even imagine. Not because he was family to me, because I feel that way about anybody's child that is murdered. Because I do have a soul, and I do have compassion for people. Now, I have come together with a few organizations. We're going to put together an event. I don't know what we can do, but we're going to do something. We just can't stand still and let this continue to happen. Now, I can say this. Where did a 16-year-old get a gun from? Where? He got it from an adult. He didn't get it from a child. He got it from an adult, and if he got it from another child, an adult gave it to that child. Us adults need to be adults. We need to be parents and not our children's friends. We need to search our children's rooms and our houses to see what they do have in our houses. If you're not connected with your kid, you don't know what your kid is doing. And I hate to say it, but there are parents who think their kids never do anything wrong. Well, let me tell you today, it doesn't surprise me about anything a child will do, because when they're not in your presence, you don't know what they're doing or who they're with. Yes, it happened in our city. It happened in our county. And it's sad that it's happening. Because that's a 16-year-old child and another 17 or 18-year-old child who may not be able to walk, and another one his family will never, ever see again, except for on pictures or a video that they made. Salisbury has to wake up. Wycomico County has to wake up. The world has to wake up and do something expediently. Don't wait for it to happen again. Because if we do, and if we don't do anything, and this starts, and I'm going to be honest, it starts from home, it starts from school, it starts in society, and it starts with our judicial system. When you tell me that a child who is being disobedient and he's in juvenile care, and you tell them that something needs to be done with him, you're crying out to the juvenile system, and guess what they tell you? He has to commit a crime. Now, here's a child that's probably been told that numerous of times. He's got spanked on his hands numerous of times, and now he's taken a life. I pray for that family as well as I pray for the family of the deceased. I pray for our whole city and our county. We as adults have to do better with our kids. We have to do better, or we're going to lose all of our kids. And the sad thing about it, and I'm going to say this, Black Lives Matter, tell me when. When will it stop? This is emotional for me. It's very emotional. Because when I see a child who's 16, he can't even live the rest of his life. Like Jackson, a young man in Delaware who was murdered for somebody else. An athlete. Doesn't matter whether he was an athlete or what he was. He no longer has a life to live. His parents have to live with this for the rest of their lives. We've got to do better. We have to. Not only parents, but just adults. We have to do better. Thank you.
Just as always, if you're healthy enough and you're fortunate enough to be able to donate blood, please do so. A pint of blood can save up to 3 lives. And I think the city has a blood drive coming up on April the 25th, I believe, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So check the website. If you're available, please put your arm out there and donate blood. Thank you.
I first want to thank everyone who came here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening, and I just want to let you know that here at the council, we have absolutely heard you, and I'm looking forward to having some further discussions with the rest of my council members. I want to second what Councilwoman Gregory mentioned. I also was very concerned with some of the things we learned over the weekend in regards to that concert that's going on. Clearly, there was no ill intention on behalf of the city, but it's very clear that we need to work on some internal processes to make sure that there is a vetting process and a screening process so events like this don't happen ever again. I mean, we're less than 10 weeks away from our Pride event, and this to me just doesn't make our LGBTQ community feel like they are actually a part of Salisbury. I mean, that event's going to happen less than a block away from our Pride Rainbow Walk, and I think we've done a wonderful job of making this a welcoming community, and I want that to continue. So, Andy, it sounds like you're already on it. Thank you, Jack, as well. Just wanted to let you guys know that, I want to emphasize the need to, work with you even to put together a definitive vetting process for this in the future so we don't have issues like this happen again. And then I want to second the words from Councilwoman Jackson. This is a tough time for our community. But it is a time for us to come together. So I encourage all of you to, not a silver lining moment here, but, most recently, Salisbury was highlighted as one of the most civically engaged communities in the nation.
Yes.
Phenomenal to hear. And that's the stepping point. We need to get out in the community. We need to get more involved because the more we're involved, the more that these children can succeed and have a better future because the kids are our future. So please, find ways to get involved in your community. We have so many phenomenal organizations of a variety of kind. Just please partake because our children are our future. And this was sad to hear, especially coming back from the Fruitland Little League. That was a moment that was meant to be an exciting time, a cherishing time for children, and then to hear that information and that news was sad. So, again, I appreciate you all for coming out this evening, and yeah.
I want to ditto everybody's comments this evening. It's been a tough weekend. Next, just a bit of housekeeping. Tomorrow, we have our budget sessions. We're going to be 8:30 a.m. in, is that room? 306. Everybody, it will not be broadcast live on PAC 14, but if you so wish to, you may watch the replay as many times as you like on YouTube. It will be riveting. The next budget session will be Thursday morning at 8:30 as well. That one will probably, hopefully, go to no later than 12 or 12:30 because I have a Wacomico County Planning Commission meeting at 1 o'clock. So hopefully we'll be done before that. And we're taking Wednesday off, so we won't be here Wednesday, just so you all know. I mean, you will. You have to be here, so. And I think without anything else, that is everything. We are adjourned.